Welcome, everybody, to an extra special episode of Session Zero Heroes, where we are going to be discussing the brand new Daggerheart RPG system. From the creators of Critical Role and all the amazing stuff that they do, we now have what is called Daggerheart, which will be, from what I understand, the TTRPG system that they will be using for their future shows, for the most part. So, very exciting. Brand new RPG system by the amazing team over there. We're really excited to kind of dive into it, and we are at a point now where we're allowed to share what we got to see. We got a little bit of like early, I don't know, Cameron, what would you call it?
Early access?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, early access to get to see it, but we all had to sign NDAs because it was very secretive. So we got to test it out a little bit, but now it is time that we are allowed to share it and share what we find. Let me introduce who's at our table. So to my left, we got Jackson. Jackson is, or Jack.
I don't care.
Okay. Jackson has been involved with our Criminals Viola Numis. He plays Dez, our beloved Kenku Ranger. To my direct forward, we have Cameron. Cameron, we all know Cameron from a number of projects, whether that be playing as Bill Dorr in Benders and Brews. He plays as Fizzlefingers, aka Rorik, in the Criminals Viola Numis, and he's also run the Monster of the Week campaign that we did so far. One of them, Music Mayhem. He's he's also been in the Dilly Dunkers one shot that we did. So a lot of stuff from Cameron's
Quit doing stuff.
That's what I tell Skylar. I say, save some room for other people.
He's accessible. That's the nice thing.
And then he's like, I tried asking everyone else. They're all busy. And I'm like,
You were
fine.
my last choice.
Skylar. You have to pull my leg.
His section on the website with the credits is just ever growing into accessible. It's hiding everybody else's stuff. I need to put Cameron's listing at the bottom because it takes up so many scrolls.
At this point, I think the third campaign is probably going to be DM'd by me. I'm thinking that's probably what's going to be.
That would be pretty dope. Maybe you can run Daggerheart.
Maybe it might be a Daggerheart campaign if I find
awesome.
a nice system or something,
That's
a nice story or something that falls into.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to my right, last but not least, we got Dave, who you all know as Guohan from Benders and Brews, and also Maki from Criminals Viola Numis.
Yeah, that's a character.
That is those are both characters.
Those are both characters.
Awesome. And today we are going to kind of walk through. So currently what we have so far from the people over at Daggerheart is the character creation process. As of when this episode will be posted, I believe they're releasing the sort of starter rules and everything else. Currently, all we have to work off of is the character creation. So we're going to walk through what the process looks like of creating a character within the Daggerheart RPG. We're going to discuss, maybe some of the similarities to other RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons. I think that there's kind of like the storytelling element that kind of gets similar, sort of inspired by from like Powered by the Apocalypse games. There's a little bit of that in there. And we're going to make characters, so that'll be fun. We don't have a huge amount of knowledge on the full official rules, so there's still a couple things on the character sheet that we're not 100% sure on how they work, but we'll try to maybe theorize a little bit or just discuss what we might know or how or what we'll get to find out, I suppose, once the time comes. So anyways, starting things off, I've got this nice big character creation sort of checklist here that kind of helps walk people through the entire process. So the first step on that process, and you guys have all kind of had a second to look over some of this stuff, but the first thing is choose a class. So there's a whole bunch of classes to choose between, and I can go through those here really quick. Very similar to Dungeons and Dragons classes. So first off, you're going to have your bards. You're talking about like performance magicians. Druids are much more nature-based magicians per se, mage classes, if you want to call them that. They can also shapeshift into animals, which is always fun, and that is something that you get in Daggerheart.
Yep.
Guardian is sort of like your kind of a fighter paladin kind of cross between the two. So you're going to be high armor, doing some melee attacks, not really magic focused too much, but there's a lot of diversity within the subclasses and the abilities that you're going to get with your character in Daggerheart. So that's not to say that you couldn't do some magic and things along those lines. It's just saying that like from a base level, this is kind of what you'd be looking at for this class. Then you've got Rangers. Rangers are your classic sort of outdoorsy experts, whatever you want to call that. Again, sometimes it's kind of got a magic theme to it. Sometimes it's a little bit more just fighting. Rogues, classic rogues, your thieves, your assassins, your even sometimes pirates, all that kind of stuff all kind of factors into rogues and what you could get out of that. Next up is Seraph. Now, Seraph is a very, it's a different verbiage than any of the D&D classes and things along those lines, the official ones that is. So Seraphs are kind of like a crossover between we're in your paladin cleric range. So they've got kind of this religious connotation to them or organization connotation to them, kind of based around a deity or some god or something like that. Then you got sorcerers, again, very classic, kind of a sort of a natural magic in a sense. Wizards, are out there learning magic through the use of books and things like that. Sorcerers usually have kind of an innate magical capability within them from something. There's a lot of different opportunities or a lot of different reasons why they have it. Warriors, classic kind of barbarian fighter-esque. You're going to be running in there. You're going to be swinging swords, axes, whatever else. And then finally, wizards. Wizards are also very classic. You're going to be your nerdy spellcasters, is the way I like to look at it. Reading up on books and spells and learning new magic and being able to cast it from there. So anyway, that's a lot of me talking and a lot of me going over the classes. But let's look at each person and kind of get a little bit deeper look into those classes based on what they took. So Jackson, what do you got?
I went ahead and picked up Sorcerer just because I always, I'm in the mood for something similar to a Warlock.
Yeah.
Figured that sounded pretty similar.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about Sorcerer. What do you kind of have as far as what's on the character sheet or kind of what is the description that it has for Sorcerer, which I think is on the top of the second page there.
Yeah, well, let's see. The description for Sorcerer says, as a sorcerer, you are formed and shaped by the will of the arcana, and you have learned how to wield that power to get what you want.
Get what you want.
They have some suggested traits. It seems like whereas in the D&D 5e book, where it lays out like hey, this is a quick way to build this character.
Yeah.
Right there on the character sheet, this has this suggested easy, quick character build.
Yeah.
With descriptions of what you could wear, what a typical sorcerer wears, what's typically in their inventory. Kind of in the center of the description page, you see questions about your background and your connections, which is great when building a character. Actually, I feel like most of the time when I am making a character and I play a few sessions of said character, it falls flat because I failed to create a solid background for my character. And let's see what's down there at the bottom. Shows what a sorcerer gains at certain levels. Do we start at level 2?
So you can start at level 1, and then when you get to, so this is kind of something that Powered by the Apocalypse usually does with their character sheet. So when you level up, they give you options that you can take, and you just cross out the little box next to it to say that I took that option. It can be, so like reading through some of them that are on your sheet, permanently add 1 hit point slot, permanently add 1 stress slot, increase your experience by 1, so on and so forth. These are going to be permanent either abilities or stat upgrades or whatever else that are going to kind of strengthen you along the way. They're a little bit more broad. In some Powered by the Apocalypse games, you're going to have specific abilities based on the class that you're playing, and these definitely have that, don't get me wrong, but it's not so much like in D&D where you have to go reference the class that you're playing and look through, at level 3 you're going to get these, and you're also going to get 1 more spell slot, and you're also going to roll your hit dice, and you're going to add, you have a lot of customization options because of the fact that you're not really limited to a specific path. You get to just mark off some sort of benefit to your character.
Yeah, and rather than going back and referencing a book all the time, which is
right,
it's fine. I really love to have a physical book and search through when it comes to D&D, but being it just at the bottom of my page, if I forget to take a note, it's already printed at the bottom of my page.
Exactly. And that's something I really like too.
Nice.
Like in D&D, and I'm not dissing D&D by any means, but in D&D, they put like such small sections for your features and traits. And between, your racial traits and your class traits and subclass traits and your background traits, like that's a lot of stuff to try to write in a little section on one page.
I know a lot of people are, but I'm not a notebook keeper.
Right.
I love to collect notebooks. I've got a ton of empty notebooks that I'm like, oh, this cover was so cool. I'm gonna use it for D&D like a little nerd.
Right.
But I don't ever. They're all empty.
You have every opportunity, just no initiative to do it. Dave, you're more of our note taker guy, and just about everything we play, I feel like you're always the guy that. I'm looking at your notebook right here at the table.
I don't see anything in that notebook.
Oh, that's true. It is blank right
ready.
now.
It's invisible ink.
Very, very fantasy, very
secret,
mysterious. Awesome. So, okay, cool. That's a great overview. I appreciate it of the kind of just the sorcerer. I wanted to mention, since you brought it up, so there are traits just like in D&D. Normally you'd have your strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and constitution. I got them all. Yes. And then, you'd have numbers in there. Similar to that, you have in Daggerheart, you have agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. And then under each of those, it kind of gives you those specific skills that trait would get rolled for. But the cool thing about it is you don't have to be like proficient in specific skills. It's sort of an overarching plus whatever number that or minus, I guess, if you're not good at it, that applies to those skills. So you're going to roll whenever your DM says, if you're trying to pick a lock, right? Your DM's going to look at those skills or the traits, and they're going to see that under finesse, you've got things like hide, tinker, control, and they would probably say, okay, that sounds like the right trait for picking a lock. So then you would roll your dice on finesse, or add finesse, and then that would be your final roll, essentially. And I think there's a couple other things that'll kind of affect that as well. But whatever case, that's the base. So you would mention that on the bottom of your character sheet, or rather on the second page, it kind of has suggested traits. So everybody's playing off the same traits. You don't roll for your traits, and then one guy has like super high, just across the board traits, while somebody else just happened to roll low, and they're kind of screwed, basically. This one, everybody's working off the same set of numbers, which is -1, 0, 0, +1, +1, +2. So everybody's going to get that same set of numbers, and they're going to distribute them among their stats. So like yours said, it kind of had suggested ones for the sorcerer to kind of help you out as far as like kind of just a base concept sorcerer works. But of course, you're not limited to that. You can put them however you want based on what character you are personally trying to create, which I think is really cool. But
I do want to say one thing I find interesting is looking at the 6 choices, because you have your traditional D&D like strength and charisma. But the big one I'm noticing is instead of charisma, they put presence, which is a thing I've always thought about with D&D, because sometimes you meet people that aren't really the most well-spoken, but their presence alone is a bigger factor. So think of like your big hulking brutes. Like if they say they want something, they might not say it in the most charming or like elegant way, but someone will still do it really quickly because of their presence alone, basically. Exactly. So I do like that the presence is a little more open, because my dream D&D character I always thought of doing is a rogue, but just like it's a Goliath rogue who literally just is like, give me your money now. And it's like that's how they steal, because they're part of the thief guild. But instead of like pickpocketing people, they literally just are, give me your money or I'll beat you up right now.
He's a push around.
I always thought that'd be an interesting character. I'm like, how would you make that in D&D without home brewing kind of stuff?
Right.
Because making them just charismatic doesn't fit what I'm going for with. It's just their strength is what makes them a rogue. Right?
And that's always been a big debate too, where intimidation is a charisma trait in Dungeons and Dragons.
But it doesn't make sense with like a barbarian intimidating.
Exactly. If the barbarian comes in and he's butt ugly and he has a -4 to charisma, but he's got like an 18th strength, if he starts popping his knuckles at you because he wants, that's intimidating. Exactly. Yeah. And I know a lot of DMs, they're like, how are you using intimidation? And then we'll adjust the skill on that. But this one, it just puts it in there as presence. Presence is a little bit more of a broad concept than, what do you look like when people look at you immediately? What are they thinking? And if you're a big burly guy, they're thinking, oh, I probably don't want to mess with him. Yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out. I think that is a pretty cool mechanic. So, Cameron, out of curiosity, what class were you kind of leaning towards?
Well, I was talking about this earlier before we started recording with you guys, and I was saying like I'm not sure if I should grab like I'm notoriously known for playing my martial classes. Yeah. I love playing warriors and barbarians and just fighters and barbarians and just playing those, right?
Absolutely.
But then at the same time, I was like, should I pick a class that I'm not as familiar with? And then I was thinking, you know what I really want to see? I want to see, there is one class that's notorious in D&D Pathfinder RPG systems that they just cannot get right, because it's this like, what is it? And that is the Ranger. Right. What is the Ranger, right? Because everyone's trying to recreate Strider. They're trying to recreate Aragorn, right? But they're like, what is it? Because it's not all druid. Yep. It's not all fighter. It's this weird, like, they're good at tracking. What is that? What does that mean? So I wanted to see, how did they take on Ranger? Because it's one of the biggest, like, it's big problems that D&D and Pathfinder have kind of fallen into. It's like, how do you perfect Ranger? Like, it's the only class that D&D had to make a whole remake of.
It's true.
Because of how poorly made it was. So I want to see how they learned from D&D's mistakes. Have you?
Absolutely. So you're going to take that Ranger. Tell me a little bit about how they describe Ranger in Daggerheart.
Yep. It says, as a Ranger, your keen eyes and graceful haste make you indispensable in tracking down enemies and navigating the wilds.
Okay.
So yeah, very Strider-like.
Yeah, very Strider-like. And it'll be something interesting to see, because I know, like you kind of alluded to, the idea that, how much is that sort of tracking? I mean, tracking definitely could come into play, but I know like the original Ranger class talked a lot about like, you had favored terrain and stuff like that. And it's like, who cares? Who's really using?
You step out of the city gates and you are suddenly in a forest, and the Ranger just gets really excited.
I found it.
I'm home.
And that's not to shortchange the DMs out there that are writing up like trade routes and the economic complexities into their campaign. Like, those are the kind of people that are definitely probably putting you guys exclusively. You are on a grasslands terrain, moving uphill at
both ways.
Exactly. Something along those lines. But for like the average DM, oh my gosh, that's a lot to like kind of try to have to keep track of and create and all this other stuff when you're doing 100 other things. And so, yeah, it's nice to kind of avoid that and see. And I think there's another aspect of this that I should probably preface, which is in Daggerheart, there's a very much heavier, I would say that it's a little bit more story over numbers than D&D is. D&D is very like, everything is kind of listed out. It's got a plus or minus to the stat. It's associated with something. You're going to add or subtract from your dice. Your range is this amount exclusively. And if it's past this amount, you're going to take, disadvantage on the attack, things along those lines. Whereas looking over the character sheet and things, there's definitely a decent amount of that, but like, there's a lot of things that are going to be more storytelling focused. And if it can be justified within the narrative of the game, then it could count towards a stat, or it could, just broadly be considered like, oh yeah, you succeed at that because it just makes sense that your character would know how to do that or be able to do that. So that kind of helps with the Ranger situation of, yeah, of course he knows how to use the terrain around him. He's a Ranger. That's what he does, Yeah. And with the concession of like, he's never experienced the desert before. So yeah, now he's a little bit out of sorts. He doesn't know what to do here. So maybe he'd take a disadvantage on something or something along those lines. But like, for instance, gold, I'm looking at that right here. So gold isn't measured by a specific number. Gold is measured by just kind of a broad concept of amount. So you've got multiple slots for handful, and then you have multiple slots that are filled in with under bag. So you'd have bags of gold, right? Then you have chests of gold. Then you have hordes of gold. And then you have a fortune, right? And so when you're playing the game and you want to buy something, right? I might have like 4 X's on handful of gold, right? So I have 4 handfuls per se, right? And then the DM says, well, what do you want to buy? And you're like, well, I want to buy this spear. And he says, okay, spear's probably going to just cost you a handful of gold. So then you just erase 1 handful of gold. Yeah, it's not like, nice. Exactly. It's not like I have exactly 325 gold.
Right.
And I need to subtract 32. And then you're sitting there running the math or whatever the case and trying to adjust it. So,
and not to mention things like silver and bronze and copper, whatever.
And nobody wants to have to keep track of that. And the DM sitting there trying to come up with pricing for things, because a lot of things aren't exclusively listed. And even if it was, who wants to go through 20 pages of inventory and economic existence?
Just kind of right off the bat, I can already tell that there is going to be less math.
Yes.
In this by far. Just the fact that you only are getting what you get 2 plus 1s, 2 zeros, 1 minus 1, and 1 plus 2.
Yes.
To literally all of your stats. There's no, what does 5e go up to? Like a plus 5.
Yeah. Yep.
Is your
20
max
would be your max
20
stat.
would be your max stat. And if I roll a 20 and I gotta see if I have a plus 5 to it, I can just, this is a lot simpler. already right off the bat.
Exactly. It's just a lot, more simplified and
less math.
Exactly. Which we all appreciate.
I'm excited.
Unless you're a big math person, I guess, but whatever the case.
Unless you're a nerd.
Unless you're a nerd. And in which case, why would you be playing a role-playing game in the first place?
Yeah.
All right, Dave, what class are you deciding to take?
So I kind of had an idea for a character, so I picked the rogue to try to see if I could work that into it. But also I picked the rogue because it does so each character has 2 keywords underneath their class.
Oh, okay.
So the rogue keywords are midnight and grace. And from what I understand, you share like card decks with class abilities.
Yep.
And so I wanted to see how it worked out if I chose a keyword that was the same as a party member's, being Jackson's. He has sorcerer, whose keywords are arcana and midnight.
Ah, okay. So you've got that midnight. So I'm glad you brought those up. So those are domain cards. And domain cards kind of are like if you took a subclass within D&D, and then even within that subclass, it kind of split into different paths within that you could take. That's kind of what the domains are. So in the domain deck, there are a number of different domains to choose from. I can go through those really quick. You've got Codex, Blade, Bone, Arcana, Grace, Valor, Midnight, Sage, and Splendor. And then each class has underneath it the options that you can take as far as these domain goes. You don't have to take them all. Like if you have the Sorcerer, your domains are Midnight and Arcana. You don't have to choose Arcana and just take 2 Arcana cards, which is what you would get at the kind of later on down the process of character creation. You're going to take 2 domain cards. Mm-hmm. You don't have to take 2 Arcana. You could take an Arcana and a Midnight. You could take 2 Midnight, whatever combination that you want that kind of helps guide your character in the direction that you want to go. And if you share them with another character, as you mentioned, Dave, you kind of have to come to an agreement with the other player that's sharing it with you. Like if you both want the same card, that's not a problem in and of itself. You can just print another card and both have it. But, depending on how you want to play it, if you really want all the characters to be different from each other, you might choose who's going to get that card and who's not, and have to take a different card. So
wait, was that mentioned? This is not like a deck of cards that you buy per se. It's one of those print and sleeve it yourself.
Exactly. Or just reference it or whatever the case. Yep, exactly. So this all comes with the character and the base rules and stuff like that. But it's a really cool concept, and it gives you abilities is what the cards do. So that's one thing that I mentioned before was, the little tiny sections of your character traits and your abilities and all this other stuff that like Dungeons and Dragons has you try to fit into those spaces. In Daggerheart, a lot of these abilities and capabilities are cards that are just going to be sitting right there next to you, easily accessible to you and your character so that you can quickly reference them, which I really like because I have never been able to get them onto the D&D page, the character sheet, without having to shrink that font size down to like 4. Mm-hmm. And then I can't read it. So then that's kind of pointless, especially when you start hitting like level 7. So anyway, awesome. So, and then did you want to give me a description there of the rogue, like how they kind of have it written out, Dave?
So as a rogue, you have experience with sidestepping the law and dealing with the underbelly of society, preferring to move quickly and fight quietly.
Quietly. So kind of, like that classic hidden in the shadows kind of rogue type character. So awesome. So that's everybody's classes. So we've all chosen a class, which is the first step. And I know we talked a lot. I think the rest of it will move a lot quicker since we've talked about a lot of the aspects of the character sheet along the way. So moving on to subclass. Cameron, you have Ranger.
Yeah.
So which subclass did you go with?
Well, see, the 2 subclass choices you have as a Ranger is Wayfinder,
right?
Which is basically you're using your agility to, you're using your abilities to just be an it says Apex Predator straight on it.
Oh, so hey.
Just be really good at the martial skills of it.
Right.
But when you get the, I'm not going to choose that one. I'm going to choose their second subclass option because when you get the Ranger, when you get the Ranger class, you don't get 2 papers like the other one. You get a third one because you get a whole companion.
Yeah, nice.
Which is what the subclass says. It's called Beast Bound.
Nice.
I have an animal companion.
Awesome.
Of my choice. And at the GM's description, of course. Take the Ranger companion sheet, and whenever you level up your character, I also choose a level that is on my companion sheet. So my companion sheet has levels of training on top of. I will be giving them traits and all.
Oh, very cool. Okay. So, and those are like sneak, climb, strike, scare, run, fly, lead, swim, all things that like kind of an animal or beast could be capable of and good at. And then they have... we'll get into it here.
Having an animal that advances and levels up with you is so much more interactive than just the animal companion of 5e.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really awesome. Cool.
And from what it looks like, and we don't have the full rules here, but what it looks like with the companion is I have all those things that Skylar read, the 8 traits, and I'm going to assume that I'm going to get 1 at the first level, and then every time I level up, I'm going to add more skills to them as well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it shows for training, whenever your character levels up, also choose 1 option for your companion from the list below and mark it.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah. And it's got a nice...
I see it now. So you get 1 companion trait to start, and then 2 of those level ups there's called intelligent. It says I choose an additional companion trait. So my companion will have up to 3 of these traits.
Right.
From sneak, climb, whatever it is. So.
Which would be really cool to, be able to kind of level up alongside your creature. I mean, they've got a damage dice thing. They've got stress, which is kind of a stat that we don't know a whole lot about in this game currently without the complete rules, but it has a stress meter as well. So while you're leveling up and you have all those options at the bottom of your second page to level up your character, you also have options to level up your beast companion as well, which is really cool. Like you said, Jackson.
I'm also going to add just a little side thing that I think is really cool. That when they designed the companion sheet, they designed it so it only takes up 2/3 of the page.
Right.
So that you can slide the main page you can slide the companion page underneath of it, and so it doesn't take up as much room to have them side to side.
Yes.
It's still,
you can always reference rather than
you can just reference it. It's right there. You don't have to flip a page, but it doesn't take up as much room because your main paper's covering 1/3 of it.
Exactly.
Already.
They really thought through the design. There's the design of the character sheets is really cool. So,
right.
If you get a chance to, once everything's kind of released, they should have a link out there for you to go download it. It's pretty neat. So, Jackson, did you figure out the subclass?
Yeah, you know what? They're pretty easy to understand. The sorcerer at the moment has 2 subclasses, one being elemental origin and one being primal origin. The primal origin, which is the one I'm not going to go with, is... Its description is your primal origin allows you to modify the essence of magic itself. After you cast a spell or use a weapon that deals magic damage, you may mark a stress to do any of the following. And I'm going to assume that as a storytelling perspective, your stress meter is like how much you exert yourself.
Right.
So like if I was a martial character and I wanted to leap a longer distance, I would mark a stress because I'm overexerting myself. Farther than normal.
I think you're right. Yeah.
It's a very, as I'm looking at it and doing my own interpretation, seems like a very cool way to do that.
Yeah. It's kind of like taking fatigue in in Avatar Legends, which we have a Benders and Brews series on. But anyway, sorry.
And so some of those actions are you stress yourself by extending the reach by 1 range of your spell, adding a +2 to the action roll result. Reroll any number of damage dice. Wild, by the way. Or you can hit an additional target within range with the spell.
Okay.
So those are all actually pretty cool. But speaking of Benders and Brews, what I want to go with is the elemental origin, which is your elemental origin lets you manipulate and shape a certain kind of element. So you choose one of water, fire, air, lightning, or earth.
Right.
And you can channel this element into unique, harmless effects, or you may also spend a hope to describe how your control over this element helps the current action, and either add +2 to the action roll before making it, or +3 to the damage after a
to help make sure you hit, or to add some to when you hit.
You either make sure you hit or you hit harder.
Yes.
Which is nice. And I think I would like to be an earth sorcerer.
Nice. Okay. So we got an earthbender kind of.
Listen.
Very cool.
I've got them square hands. every Avatar, the last Airbender, they're like ooh, what bender are you by your hand shape? And I'm like, earthbender, earth. Yes!
Primary hand shape. That's so specific.
I don't know. It's all,
I think
all
that's
I see
really
on the
cool.
internet.
Yeah. So you got like these earth kind of abilities and powers very centered within the element, which I think is really cool. Like a very Avatar: The Last Airbender, but still, nonetheless, like very cool.
It's interesting that it says you can channel this element into a unique harmless effect. So like that just kind of leads you into some storytelling while you're playing. Like,
absolutely.
Oh, I'm going to make this little earth goblin to go build a fire, a little earth golem. Over here.
Very, very sort of like a prestidigitation or thaumaturgy, where it's kind of those harmless little effects, but very specifically geared towards the earth control.
And you don't necessarily need to worry about spending a spell slot.
Yeah. And that's also nice.
And here it's called hope. Use hope to help an ally or an experience.
Right.
Which all are kind of strange words to me at the moment. I'm not entirely sure.
We'll figure those out along the way. Exactly. What does Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dungeons & Dragons, horrifying monsters, and a group of weirdos all have in common? They're all featured in the Session Zero Heroes podcast. That's what. At SCH, we collaboratively create stories from a variety of tabletop role-playing games, such as Avatar Legends, which is set in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, or the most well-known TTRPG, Dungeons & Dragons, the spooky Monster of the Week, and so many more. If you're a fan of unexpected twists and turns as a team of players creates characters thrown into insane worlds of the Dungeon Master's creation, then this is the show for you. Come join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else podcasts can be streamed, including our website at sessionzeroheroes.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Discord for all our news and announcements, and to become part of our amazing TTRPG community that we're building. You won't want to miss out on Session Zero Heroes podcast, so check it out today. And then Dave, you're over here with your rogue. Which subclass did you feel a calling towards?
Right. So I had a couple options for rogue, Nightwalker, and Syndicate. So Nightwalker is jumping through the shadows, kind of disappearing. And Syndicate is like who you know. Like if you enter a town, it says, well, this is one I'm picking, so I'll read that.
Okay.
When you arrive in a heavily populated town or city, you know somebody that calls this place home. Give them a name, note how you think they could be useful, and choose one from the list below. And there's like options like they owe you a favor, or you left on bad terms.
Ooh.
Because that could be an interesting option to create story, enhance it for yourself personally, work with the DM to build the world a little bit.
Everywhere I go, somebody owes me a favor.
It's like, everywhere I go, somebody owes me money.
Remember that time I gave you my left sock? It's your time to repay it.
give me that
both,
sock back.
Both. Hand them over.
With the interest. Very cool. So you're the guy that always knows somebody. He's always got a guy. You guys walk into a town, you're like, oh man, we broke our cartwheel. You're like, psh, I know a cart repair guy.
It's just turning into Pawn Stars.
Let me call
an expert.
That's true.
But it does say heavily populated, I suppose. So it's not a real podunk town.
Right.
More cities like.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I know the magical item salesman. He owes me a favor.
He owes me a favor. In the middle of small town
There's
Iowa.
like 8 people that live here. Yeah, well, I know one of them.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. I think that's a really cool sort of, and that's the thing with rogues, the diversity within rogue in and of itself is just so massive, right? Like I said before, I mean, you got everything from your kind of like ninja or assassin or thief or pirate. I mean, all of that kind of stuff gets encompassed in here. So it is really hard to just sort of narrow things down along the way without getting too specific or something like that. You know, the character creation opportunities are pretty unlimited. And so I think this is a good way to like keep things broad while also kind of helping you specialized in a specific area. So very cool. Very cool. Awesome. We'll move on to number 3. Number 3 is you're choosing your heritage, and heritage comes in 2 parts. So you have your ancestry, which is sort of like your race or your species. And then you're going to have your community, which is kind of like where you came from, right? Sort of how did your upbringing affect what you kind of became or turned into, or how your character kind of developed into whatever it is, right? So looking at races or the ancestries, as they call them, I mean, anything you could think of within Dungeons and Dragons is probably in here, plus some extras. You've got Clanks. Those are like your Warforged, and those are pretty sick. Daemons. It's demon with an A in it. It's kind of like your Tieflings. You've got Dracona, which is like your Dragonborns, right? You got all those. A couple that I noticed that are really cool. So you got Fungril, which is sort of like a fungus.
Say fun girl?
Yeah,
fun
it's
girl.
a fun girl.
Yes.
You can play a fun girl. Fun girl, which is sort of like a mushroom species. You've got, let's see what else is in here. Okay, so you've got Katari, which is sort of like a kitsune-esque sort of fox person or cat person. It does specifically say feline, but I think you could probably fit kind of more of a fox, a lupine, something
you could do like a dog person if you really want.
You could even do a dog person, yeah.
This is your furry.
I think, yeah, this is exactly. I think there's a lot of options in there that you could kind of create yourself. Samaya, I think is how you pronounce that, which is like a monkey person, which I think is really cool. You've got a ribbit, which is a frog person. So they definitely took some like cool animal concepts and they threw them in there. And the cool thing about the racial or these ancestry options is that there really isn't a limit to them. It comes with the name, the description, and one like feat or trait or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like within D&D where your stats are going to get an increase in a specific way. You're going to get like 3 to 5 different traits. It's going to tell you about your age, options, going to tell you about all these other factors. It's very simple, so it really opens the entire like an insane huge world up to making some homebrew ancestries. It's like the easiest thing in the world. So but with that being said, we're going to try to stick with the ancestry options that are afforded to us currently with what Daggerheart gave us. So starting with Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you decide to pick?
So I went with the ribbit. So let me say, my character idea is kind of inspired by Kuro from One Piece.
Okay.
I know that's kind of popular, so maybe some of you have seen that, the live action. So Kuro is the pirate captain, the former captain of the Black Cat Pirates, who is now a butler or servant at the rich girl's house.
Yeah.
So my idea for this rogue was that he would be... perhaps he has a past, like in the syndicate connections. Maybe he was part of a larger organization at one point, but now he has just been going from town to town or large city to large city and tricking rich families to hire him as a servant, and then eventually stealing from them and skipping town.
Nice. I like it. And I like that you have kind of like a character example that I feel like a lot of people would know. I know I definitely remember him.
All right. So Ribbit, why did I pick a frog person? Well, I guess I'm thinking a little bit of Over the Garden Wall. There
you go.
There's one of my favorite episodes of that show was the frog episode.
Yes.
The frog boat, but there were frog butlers. And that's kind of what I'm thinking of.
And the president. They met the president too.
Oh, did they?
That's right. They met the president.
And then, so interesting thing about the ribbit, so it literally is a frog person for all intents and purposes. And then Dave, you get 2 sort of ancestry abilities that kind of come with it.
These seem very good. Let's, I have 2 abilities where some of these appears they only have 1.
Right.
Amphibious is the first. You can breathe and move underwater just as easily on land.
Awesome.
And then the other one seems pretty fun. Long tongue. You can use your long, powerful tongue to grab onto things close to you. You may also mark stress to unleash it as a close weapon that does D12 physical damage.
And I just want to emphasize on this. And technically speaking, when it comes to like dice rolls, like rolling a D12 isn't always that much better than rolling, say, a D8 plus a modifier, right? Because you could still roll low on the D12. But I do want to mention the fact that looking at some of the weapons in here, usually the standard is D8. And then there's a few of them that do D10s. And like there's one weapon, a Warhammer does a D12. So to think that your tongue is capable of basically being on par with a Warhammer is hilarious.
It's just a fist in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just imagining, for the normal usage of it, you're just pulling the like Jar Jar Binks using his tongue to pick up the little fruits at the table. And somebody in your party's just getting really annoyed with you for it. Cameron, tell me about your ancestry that you picked now. For your ranger. Yeah.
Like Dave.
Yes.
I immediately came up with a concept for my character. Immediately after I picked Beastbound with my companion.
Yes.
I'm like, what do I want a companion to be?
Yeah.
And I immediately thought, I think it'd be so funny if I did like a retelling of like Curious George. Where I was this happy-go-lucky dude who just was wandering in the forest one day.
Yep.
And this monkey came out of nowhere and was just like, yo, I'm your friend now and I'm not going to ever leave your side. And I'm just like, I don't want you to be here, but he kept following me, and now
Jack Johnson music kept playing.
Upside Down started playing. I'm like, okay, so years later, I'm still stuck with this guy. So I thought, what would be the perfect ancestry race to go with this? And I am shifting. It's not a monkey.
Okay.
Rather, my little guy, a halfling, was going out on a halfling adventure, and he was making himself a bowl of stew.
Okay.
And while eating said stew, he turns and sees a giant orange orangutan just standing next to him, and just going like, ooh. And he's like, what do I do? So he just kind of holds out his bowl for the orangutan, and the orangutan grabs the bowl and drinks it, and then holds it out for him, and he kind of just kept refilling it.
Seconds, thirds.
And 7 years later, him and his orangutan have been going on cross whirlwind adventures because the community I also picked was Wanderer born.
Oh, okay.
So my guy was born into a nomadic halfling tribe that always kind of traveled around. And for his reason why, we can get into that in later backstory stuff, but he went out on his own because he's more of a loner kind of personality.
Sure.
And through traveling alone, he ran into his orangutan friend, and this is where he is now. So he is a ancestry halfling with the community of Wanderborn, and now I'm going to read them just so the audience can know.
Yeah.
Halflings, very similar to D&D though. Little lucky, at the beginning of each session, give everyone in your party a hope. So
Whoa.
that's pretty big.
Wow.
Right at start. Yeah. And then you may always re-roll a 1 on a hope die. If you do, take the new result instead. So you always re-roll 1. So a halfling cannot roll 1 on a hope roll. So that's pretty big.
So kind of similar to the luck feat.
Very similar, but
Dungeons and Dragons.
Very, I would say stronger because that's only on a D20.
Right.
And you only get it once. And if you happen to roll back-to-back ones, well, you're stuck with it. This time, it says you always are re-rolling if it's a 1.
Right.
And it's a D12. So the chances of 1 is a lot higher. So that's pretty good.
Right.
As for Wandererborn, it says a nomadic pack. So I have a nomadic pack to add to my inventory. And then once per session, I may spend a hope to just reach into my pack and pull out any common item that I think is just the perfect thing for the situation, as long as it's not, too crazy. The GM approves of it. So I think this, it really fits with my character. Is like this halfling literally just wandered around everywhere and just happened to have the perfect thing to make an orangutan best friend.
Right.
I pull a hot bowl of soup out of my backpack.
Yep. Just magically keeps pulling bananas out. And just like, oh, this is the best guy I've ever met.
I freaking love the idea.
I can imagine the orangutan walking behind my guy and just pulling stuff out of my back. He's just looking.
You're like, put that back. I freaking love the idea that, it's a halfling. So this orangutan is very probably bigger.
Oh, he's like
than
3 sizes bigger than him.
So it's like little dude with big best friend kind of thing.
Big dude
with little best.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. A reverse. Yeah.
Well, if you ask the orangutan, it would be the flip. Oh, this is my little buddy.
I love it. I love this character idea so much. This is fantastic. Dave, did you want to mention which community?
Yep, I think it only makes sense to go with the Wildborn community. So, it says you're part of a Wildborn community means you were raised by a clan deep within the forest. So maybe like a a tree frog type thing.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. Okay. But the ability also goes well with a rogue class. Its ability is Lightfoot. Your movement is naturally silent. Take advantage on any action rolls you make to move without being heard. You could spend a hope to also grant this ability to an ally in very close range of you.
So you like teach them the like Dune Arrakis walk thing.
Yeah.
Like this is how you don't summon not worms. I mean, maybe it could be, but in this case, it's just like maybe people or try not to alert anybody. So very cool. Okay, cool. So raised in the forest, kind of very like elvish kind of a feel, and then having kind of that silent nature that you've developed over jumping through the trees and running through the brush and all that kind of stuff. So very cool. Awesome. All right. And then Jackson, jumping back to this sorcerer that you're putting together.
Yeah. I always, when I build a character in D&D, I always kind of think of, I almost think of my past experiences with the game. And I'm like, man, I kind of always want a jack of all trades, master of none.
Nice. Okay.
Better than a master of one type of character.
Sure.
And so for the sorcerer, I took the orc ancestry, so the orc race, or the description is, orcs are mostly recognizable as humanoids with square features and boar-like tusks.
Now it comes back to those square features you were talking about.
So they're already the perfect
That's perfect.
And this another thing that kind of ties in with that Earthbender. You could flip this in a story way that I'll explain in a second. But their kind of skill is called sturdy. Mm-hmm. And it's whenever you should mark an armor slot, roll a d6, and on a 5 or more, so 5 or 6, I don't imagine you'd add anything there. So on a 5 or 6, you don't mark the armor slot, but still reduce the incoming damage by your armor score.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting.
Rather than my armor, I assume the armor slots are your armor taking damage.
Yeah.
And so rather than that happening, I'm just using my toughness or my like rock-like features.
Yep.
I summoned a rock armor to myself
to kind of take the hit
damage instead.
Awesome.
And being a sorcerer, my character is coming from the Underborn community.
Okay.
And being part of an Underborn community means that you are from the Subterranean Society.
Yes.
And that is, they say it's typically like, darker places, no real light areas. So they get low light living. And so when you're in an area with low light or heavy shadow, you have advantage on rolls to hide, investigate, or perceive detail.
Oh, you're the dark vision guy.
So, I think that it's
Gloomstalker, huh?
It's interesting because rather than just getting dark vision, right, you just have advantage, on rolls. And I thought it was interesting that it was on rolls to hide. So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just
he's a sneaky dude.
Different than dark vision in a way.
Yeah. A little bit more to it than just I can kind of see well in the dark. You can see well and you can hide well. Kind of a roundabout. I grew up in a place that's just constant dark and shadows.
Right.
There are things that come with that for sure. So awesome. Very cool. All right. So next up on the list. So we would do the traits. I don't think it really makes too much sense to go through these because again, I mean, you can say that I would say let's highlight the +2 and the -1. So everything else is pretty like +1, +0. It's not like a huge amount, but for whatever you guys chose as far as your +2, which will be kind of your primary highest stat, and then your -1, something that you feel like your character wouldn't really focus too much on. Dave?
I was probably just going to go with the suggested traits for the rogue. +1 to agility, so sprinting, leaping, maneuvering. Nice. -1 to strength, lift, smash, grapple. +2 to finesse, control, hide, tinker. 0 to instinct, perceiving, sensing, navigating. +1 to presence, charm, perform, deceive. And 0 to knowledge, recall, analyze, comprehend.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that fits that character well. I was figuring you were going to take that +1 to presence because I feel like that really fit your character's whole, I know somebody in town, that kind of sort of thing. And then like the sort of butler-esque kind of side of things. So I like it. All right, perfect. Cameron, you got your idea on at least your +2 and your -1?
Yeah. I'm doing it right now, but I'm filling it as I go. But I'm trying to think of like what my character is, and I'm very much calling back to like Curious George, man with the yellow hat. Like I'm the halfling. Like as I said, it's been like 7 years I've been with this orangutan, and it's very much like we've learned each other's strengths and weaknesses. Right. And my guy's biggest weakness is, strength. He is a teeny tiny, weak little halfling. But the orangutan will just sometimes just pick him up and put him on his shoulders and just carry him across the country and stuff. But where he comes into hand is instinct, and his instinct is his perceived sense and navigate. And as a nomadic ranger, I feel like he'd be amazing at that.
Just makes sense.
He is just designed for tracking, exploring, probably good at berry collecting and finding food. As we all know, halflings are great at making food out of anything.
That's right.
Unnatural
mushrooms.
Exactly. I'm gonna put 1 in agility though, +1 in agility, because it fits for the ranger class. Yes. On top of the fact that he's kind of probably had to get out of some tight spots and stuff, and he's a quick little halfling. And then it would be another +1 and 2 zeros. I'm gonna say 0 probably for presence, probably because he's lived away from no one, so no presence there.
Right.
And then his finesse, I'm probably gonna say that's his other 0, just because he's never really needed much finesse. But knowledge, I think, is his last +1, just because that's recall, analyze, comprehend. That's just the stuff he's learned.
Yes.
He's probably read a lot of books on his time, just takes books and reads in his free time and stuff. And probably has now had to read up a lot on orangutans just to learn more about them. So when he's passing from town to town on his journeys, he probably sees if they have any books and he swaps books with them.
Right.
It's like, I'll trade you a book for one of yours and something like that.
I like to think the first book that he went through for the orangutan thing was like, what are they allowed to eat and what would be poisonous to orangutans, so I don't accidentally.
And the first one just said, under no conditions feed them stew. And he's just like,
tears page out, throws it away. Awesome. All right. And then let's see, Jackson, you've got your stats for your sorcerer.
Yeah, I also kind of just went with the suggested stats, highlighting the +2 being instinct.
Okay.
And the -1 being strength.
Yes.
I feel like as a sorcerer, these make sense. Because as it says in the description, you were formed and shaped by the will of Arcana. And that being said, a sorcerer probably uses Arcana to solve most of their problems.
Right.
And so never really the need for strength.
Right.
But always has kind of a proficiency when it comes to navigation or sense or perception.
Okay. And I was going to say, my one concern would be is that I think everybody here took a -1 to strength. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we need a 4th member to our party.
Yes.
Well, no, wait.
Well, hang on. You have an orangutan.
Yes, that's right.
All the strength we need.
But yeah, Jackson, for your character, I kind of thought, like, given the kind of earthbender or the orc kind of background, like, I feel like most people's first thought would be, oh yeah, it makes sense that he'd be the +2 strength. But I like what you said, which is, I've never had to rely on strength before. Right. I rely on my magic to do the strength for me. So
listen,
I think that's cool.
If Skyrim ever taught me anything, is that orcs are very diverse people.
Yes.
It's not fair to be racist to them.
Yes. Try to pigeonhole them into the warrior types.
They are all different types of people.
That's
we are
true.
beyond our stereotypes.
Exactly. I appreciate that, and so do the orcs.
So do orc players.
Yes. Awesome. So number 5 in the process is set your threshold and hope. So basically, this is about your damage threshold. We're not going to go over this because this kind of delves into the more like stat base and rules that we don't technically have just yet. Basically, the way that is you have your damage thresholds, and there are different like levels of that. So you've got minor, major, severe damage, and then you have your HP. And so as I understand, taking minor damage is going to deal different amounts to your HP versus major damage, right? You're going to have like, oh, some dude punched you versus you just broke your arm, or, you know, you just got stabbed in the chest. You know, those are going to be different like levels of how bad this damage was, right? Mm-hmm. But again, we don't have a whole lot of information on what the rules are on that. So we're going to kind of skip over those for now. And then otherwise you have your hope, which we've kind of mentioned a couple of times throughout here. Hope is kind of like I almost want to call it when you get inspiration dice. So it's kind of along those lines where it's going to benefit you or your allies by using your experiences as kind of a storytelling arc to give you additional like bonuses to your stat rolls. Again, something that we don't have a whole lot of information on, so there's not really much point in us going over it. But it does say that regardless, you take 2+ hope at the start of your campaign. So there's that. Starting weapon. If everybody has just kind of a general idea, there are some listed in the equipment, but pretty much anything that you can come up with. If you feel like your character would have just kind of a really interesting specific weapon, what would they have basically?
Gotcha. I feel like, so I mean the page's suggested weapon is a dual staff.
Right.
However, I was thinking more along the lines of a spear.
Oh, okay.
Whose head of the spear is more of a like a sharpened gem in a way.
Oh, okay.
So more is like an arcane focus in a way,
right?
But also a weapon.
Yeah, I like it. That's cool. Dave, what would your rogue be running around with in his froggy tendency?
Frog hands. So he'd probably go with just the basic knife, easily concealable. Looks like the rogue still gets that sneak attack for melee attacks. So that would benefit that. I don't know if this exists, but if I had another option for a starting weapon, it would be fun to have like a dart gun.
Nice.
If I'm going with like I'm from a tree frog community, maybe I have a poison gland somewhere on my body.
That's cool.
But
and you're able to kind of refill. You don't really need, like, you could pick up any little pointy whatever that fits inside your dart gun, but you poison it yourself and then you shoot it. That'd be cool. I like it. Awesome. And then Cameron, with your ranger, what is he wielding? What's he running around with?
Can I dual wield?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah,
I want to. Well,
as long as the weapon can be
dual wield.
Yeah,
I have 2 weapons of choice.
Okay.
One is it's my walking stick.
Nice. Okay.
I just always have on me. But if I know I'm going into combat, I'm gonna stash that walking stick and pull out the big guns. My frying pan.
Nice. Nice. I like it. I think we could probably like homebrew the stats for just like a typical hammer.
Yeah,
and probably turn that. It's just going to be a blunt. Yep. Yeah.
Both of them are just blunt objects. Yes. Because, as is very clear with my character, my orangutan does most of the heavy lifting for me. And mind you, I should have said this when I was doing my pluses and stuff.
Yeah.
I get those stats, my companion traits. I read it, and it says I get 2 of them at the start.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I was going to say the 2 I took for my orangutan was climb and strike, because I felt like those were the 2 most obvious for an orangutan.
Right.
So... yeah, so he can climb and strike.
I like the idea that he could, because he is a primate, he could pick up a weapon if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And use it. I mean, it would
probably
still
be more proficient than I would be with a weapon. You're like, oh, there's a long sword there. Here you go. Yeah. And I just hand it off to him.
He just wants the frying pan. You're like, no, this is what I'm
eyeing my frying pan. Yeah. He keeps trying to grab my ladle. Not because he wants to fight with it, but because he wants more stew.
Yeah. Don't dirty my ladle, man. Awesome. Very cool. And then next up would be armor. So I'm just going to go through because armor is pretty straightforward. You just have leather armor, you have breastplate armor, you have chainmail armor, and you have full plate armor. And they all kind of either grant some sort of ability or just have a general armor score. It's very simple. So light armor is going to give you an armor score of 3, but it also gives you a +1 to evasion because it is light. Breastplate armor doesn't give you any special abilities or anything like that. Gives you a 5 armor score. Chainmail armor, a 7, but it's heavy, so it's actually going to subtract 1 from your evasion. And then full plate armor, which is very heavy, it's going to subtract 2 from your evasion, 1 from your agility, but it gives you an armor score of 9. And basically, that's pretty much like almost spot on for D&D. The more armor you have, the heavier it is, the more it's going to take away from your ability to kind of sneak around and do stuff like that. So that's pretty general concept. I don't know if we need to really talk about which armor our characters take. It's not the end of the world.
You know, I would like to point out, though, on the D&D 5e character sheet, it's a pretty big empty box for weapons. I mean, you typically have your little 2 lines of
right.
your primary, secondary weapon. However, here your primary and secondary weapon are very big sections of a box, and there's no real room for like, oh, I picked up this weapon over here, I picked up this weapon here, and I can just be like, oh, I'm going to equip this one out of my bag.
Right.
You have a primary weapon, a secondary weapon, and there's a space for a weapon in your inventory.
Exactly, in case you want to switch out.
So you have 3 weapons, which I think incentivizes you. Like if you stop in a town, you'd be like, I put this in my backpack.
Right.
I would like to put it in my inventory weapon, so I'm going to sell my current inventory weapon to kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
Because I would like this at my disposal.
And then you also have the same thing for armor too. You have a regular armor that you have on, and then you have an inventory armor. And I think this is really nice in situations where maybe you want to switch to light armor because you're sneaking through an area. Although, I don't know, somebody could make an argument about like, okay, well, maybe. You have the chainmail armor, which is normally noisy and subtracting from your evasion. Just because it's in your backpack doesn't mean it's not making any less noise.
I bundle it with rags.
Right, there you go. Okay, so there'd be a potentially like good argument for that. But anyways, yeah, so you could switch between armors. Of course, your armor class is going to go down, but
or change.
Exactly. But it's nice to have the ability to quickly jump between those two. Right. So I think that's kind of neat. Hey everyone, Skylar here. Are you a fan of Session Zero Heroes and the shows we produce, or the characters involved? Then you should check out our epic merch we have available online. From shirts to stickers and everything in between, we worked hard on creating a variety of designs and made sure to get your favorite characters on those products as well. Whether you're looking for Brock Lee on a hoodie to wear to the gym with you, or maybe Fizzlefinger's tote bag to stuff your ill-gotten gains in, we've got you covered. Just head over to our website at sessionzeroheroes.com and click on our merch tab to see all the amazing products and designs that you can get. Now back to the show.
I feel like this just gives you more of a idea of how to be a broader character.
Right.
The starter guide kind of lays out a suggested primary weapon, but that list you showed me of all of the weapons kind of gave me an idea of a primary weapon and a secondary weapon and a weapon that I would probably put in my backpack.
Yeah.
Just as like a kind of catch-all.
Exactly.
Of course, I don't know. We don't really have the rules in front of us. I don't know what you necessarily start with.
Right.
But if I could start by filling out all of those, I probably would.
So what it says in my character creation guide is that you can have up to 2 hands worth of active weapons.
Right.
So you could have 2 weapons from the get-go.
Yeah, like a stick in a frying pan.
What if I have a tongue?
That's a freebie.
He's got a third hand.
Oh, third hand. Whoa, Zorro. I thought you were playing a different One Piece character, Dave.
I did see that up near the active weapons, there are 2 drawn hands.
Yes.
And that kind of symbolizes your hands in play.
Yeah.
So if my idea of a spear I went ahead and took the stats of a dual staff anyway.
Right.
Just because it's essentially the same thing, but
yeah.
both of my hands are occupied.
Yes.
So I cannot have a secondary weapon in my active weapons box.
Or a shield.
Or a shield.
There were shields in that list.
Yep.
But I could have a secondary in my inventory, or if I went to a single-handed weapon, I probably could have 3 weapons on my person in theory.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, with how big my frying pan is, it could double as a shield.
That's true.
Have you ever played PUBG?
Yeah, I was just thinking. Now we're dipping into.
Or if he's pan shot.
I'm just covered in pans.
So after starting armor, we go to number 8, which is take your starting inventory. This stuff is all listed underneath your character. You have different options, and there's also kind of like things that you would normally have. You know, kind of your classic adventurer's kit. You're going to have torches, rope, basic supplies, how much gold that you kind of start off with. And then it gives you a couple of options to kind of choose between. Again, this is just stuff that you'll look through and with your character, you can kind of choose between. Same thing kind of goes for character description, which is the number 9 section on the character creation. So you're going to have, you know, what kind of clothes do you typically wear? What do your eyes look like? What kind of build does your body have? so on and so forth. So again, all this kind of stuff that's sort of more cosmetic, something that you get to choose between. After that, you have your domain deck. So that's what I kind of wanted to jump into next. So more cards that we're going to jump into. And this goes back to what we talked about kind of near the beginning, or kind of in the class section. It's actually near the end of when we were discussing classes. Under each class, as we mentioned before, you have two kind of domains. For instance, the sorcerer, which is the one I got in front of me, has Arcana and Midnight. So there are 3 cards for each domain. And they give you all the level 1s, which means there are going to be more later on, right?
Yeah.
So level 1 for like Blade, you have Not Good Enough, you have Retaliation, you have Whirlwind. They're all skills that you get with your character. Now they also have a little cost up in the top corner. We don't know what those are yet. They don't really list it in the rules that they've given out so far, and that's okay. It's something that we'll find out later on. But with each of your characters, you're going to take 2 cards total from the level 1 section of either of those domains.
Don't you have other cards to look for? Did you want to try and mix match, Dave? You should.
Oh, I was saying I would pick probably either one of these and then this one.
Oh, gotcha.
You got to pick 2?
Yeah.
Right.
2 total.
1 from each?
It can be any
2
combination.
from the other one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You're not limited to only Arcana.
That's
or only...
interesting.
Yeah.
You have these 6 traits to choose from.
Yep.
Nice.
Which is also kind of cool. I mean,
this.
these are kind of, we don't have a whole lot of rules, but are these kind of laid out like your cantrips and starting spells?
These feel more like when you get a level up. Every class gives you like a level added perk, except if you go more spellcasters.
Okay.
Spellcasters typically are just like, sometimes it's just like levels.
Yeah.
Right. But from what it looks like, from how I was looking at it, it looks like each level, at level 1, you get like the fighters get your martial class. At level 2, you get like you can heal, right? At level 3, you get to pick your subclass. It looks like at each level up, you're basically just adding another perk to your character.
Right.
Gotcha.
Which is really cool because, again, it really opens up the options to stem out, and you're not limited by whatever subclass that you choose.
And I'm going to assume it's probably going to be like when you get to level 2, you can take one of any level 2 within your 2, or you could go and take like another level 1 if you
right.
like that.
As far as I know, there's no dual classing. There might be.
So there is multi-classing.
Is there multi-classing?
It says when you're at level 5 and then up, it says choose an additional class for your character, then cross out unused. So there is an option. We don't have these, but there is an option at 5 up where you can take an upgraded subclass. So I'm imagining one of these subclass. These are like my Beastbound cards, like Jackson's Earthbending or whatever. They will have a back that has an upgraded side, and then you flip it, and it goes to that. So this says instead of taking that, you can instead multi-class, and then you would choose an additional class for your character. And then whatever you would literally just take an additional class, so probably an additional subclass or something. So
very similar to in some of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, one of the level up options that you have usually is you can take an ability from another playbook. So I think it's going to be very similar to that, to kind of just, again, even further diversify your character and kind of the direction he's going in. So with that being said, what domain cards did you guys pick? Dave, I see you got 2 in front of you, unless you're still looking.
I picked 2. So first one is one of the grace abilities, Deft Deceiver. Spend a hope to take advantage on a roll you make to deceive or trick someone into believing a lie you tell them.
Awesome. Which fits your character perfectly.
The other one is a Midnight Spell.
Ooh.
Uncanny Disguise.
Nice.
When you have a few minutes to prepare, you can mark a stress to don the facade of any humanoid you can picture clearly in your mind. While disguised, all presence rolls to avoid scrutiny have advantage. The spell will begin to fade after 1 hour.
Awesome. I like it. So you've got a disguise and another one to kind of help you with your deception, your lies, your trickery. So definitely that very roguish kind of feel there. I like it. So awesome. We'll go to Cameron. Cameron, what did you find?
So first off, we were talking about the thing on the top right. It's got a little lightning bolt thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's actually a cost, because the card I took is called Nimble. And it says, while this card is in your loadout, add your agility score to your evasion. That's just a passive, right?
Right.
But it does have the lightning bolt with the 1 on the top right.
Okay.
So if that's not a cost, it might be like it adds something to me for just having this trait.
Okay.
Or it might have a cost to take this card. We don't know that yet, but I'm just saying that symbol doesn't mean it costs to do it.
Right.
Because this is just a passive.
Right.
So
okay.
I'm just adding that. Anyways, I took that. So it fits with my character. My character's very nimble, very evasive, right? Just from his height and stuff.
Right.
And I would also say partly because they're distracted by the giant hulking beast to his side. They're probably less focused on him than the orangutan. Right?
I completely agree.
And then the other one, I think fits so well. It's called Nature's Tongue. And it says you can speak the language of the hidden natural world. And when you want to speak to the plants and animals around you, I can make an instinct roll. And on a success, they'll give you the information they know.
Right.
With fear, the knowledge might be limited or come at a cost. In addition, whenever you make a spellcast roll while in a natural environment, I may spend hope before making this roll to add 1 to the result.
Nice.
I feel like this just comes from 7 years of having an orangutan breathing down my neck.
It's taught you the way.
Very similar to like Rocket the Raccoon and Groot.
Yes.
From like they didn't speak the same. He didn't know Groot, but then from just being in prison together all those years, he just one day just understood him. And I feel like that kind of makes sense with like the orangutan just being together for 7 straight years and he won't leave me alone. My guy just like yelled at him one day like, "No, I don't have any more stew." And then he just responded in perfect like English that my guy just understood orangutan. He's like, "Oh, no, I don't have bananas. No, stop." And he just starts responding to like his request, but he's speaking orangutan the whole time, but he knows exactly what he's saying in orangutan. And
stew was the starter word to help him understand.
A lot of stew.
Awesome. I love it. Jackson, what do you got? What'd you come up with?
Yeah, so I took 2 Arcana cards. And this Arcana card might explain the number in the corner. I took Unleash Chaos, and at the beginning of a session, place a number of tokens equal to your spellcast trait on this card.
Oh, okay.
And if that is the little lightning bolt in the circle, that would kind of make sense.
Okay.
So that would be like 1 token.
Right.
You can make a spellcast roll against a target within a far range and send any number of tokens to channel raw energy from within yourself and unleash against them. On a success, roll a number of D10 equal to the tokens you spent. And do that much magic damage to the target. Mark a stress to replenish this card with tokens up to your spellcast trait.
Spellcast trait.
And
awesome.
Clear all tokens at the end of session. And then the other one I took was Wall Walk. And that one says, spend a hope to allow a creature you can touch to climb on walls and ceilings as easily as walking on the ground below. The spell will end after 10 minutes or when you cast it on another creature.
Okay, awesome. I like it. So once we figure out like how the spellcast traits work, that Unleash Chaos could be ridiculously powerful too.
Yeah, it kind of sounded like it because I wonder if I must need to level up or something to gain more tokens. But a D10 equal to the amount of tokens you spent could be insane amount of damage.
Exactly. If you can get like 6 tokens, you're basically casting fireball on your enemies and just blowing things up. I love it. That's going to be epic. And then you said for the second one you picked
Wall Walk.
Okay. So then you can do your classic spider climb situation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Awesome. So, we've got our domains. We've got our character stuff. There are the background questions. So on each character's sheet, and this I like this better than the usual. In D&D, you have your personality, your bonds, your flaws, your ideals, right? Yeah. And I know every single time I make a character sheet, I have to look up like examples for, at the very least, ideals and bonds, because I'm like, oh man, how do those work again?
I think what D&D 5e did well about those, though, is they gave you a table.
Yes.
And a table of a die that you can roll. And if you weren't sure, you could go with just go with fate.
Yeah.
Which was kind of easy to do. But the asking you questions does kind of make you think about it in a different way than you would just be like, oh, this bond was kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's stuff to kind of help you along the way with sort of fleshing out your character that I think helps people think a little bit more, because you're going to have you always have two players, right? You have the player that fully fleshes out their character and writes you like a 4-page booklet of their backstory and why they feel certain ways about certain things. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It's usually me. And then you've got the other players that they come to the session and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even fill in this stuff. I didn't know I had to. And you're like, well, who's your character? Who are you playing? You know,
me.
Yeah, there you go. And so, this kind of helps simplify the process. It's literally just a question that helps you kind of come up with ideas for your character. So for instance, I'm looking at the sorcerer character sheets. Like, what did you do that makes the people in your community wary of you? Who finally taught you how to control the magic bursting forth from you, and why are they no longer able to guide you? You have true fear. You hide from everyone. What is it, and does it scare you? And then from there, you go into step 12, which is generating experiences. So every character is going to have 2 experiences, and these stem from those background questions. As I understand, these experiences can be used to add stats or add numbers to your rolls if you roll based on something that's related to that experience. So jumping back to like, who was it that trained you, right? How did they help you control your magic, right? You might talk about this mentor that you had and how they trained you and stuff like that. And then that would give you a +1 in theory from this experience to your rolls when you're controlling your magic or using your magic, things along those lines, right? That's how I understand it. Again, the rules don't explicitly say it, but I feel pretty confident that that's how it works. And then as far as that plus or addition to your experience, you're going to do one at +2 and one of them at +1 as far as, how they benefit you. So pretty cool concept. Jackson, for your background questions, you don't have to have an answer to them, but just, if you do, go for it. But otherwise, what do you have for your background questions on your I almost wanted to say Ranger Sorcerer. Well, you have the same. You have the Sorcerer. I just read through them.
You were just reading off. Okay. So by all means.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to go for it, or if you feel like you have answers, I know I'm kind of like jumping on it.
I can think of some quick answers at the moment. When it comes to what people in your community, what did you do to make people in the community wary of you? I think is an interesting question, because I'm kind of also thinking of sorcerer as warlock in a way where, although I was shaped by arcana, where warlock was granted by, an evil-ish being usually.
Right.
I think that being shaped by arcana and choosing unleash chaos, it would make sense for at some point in my life, unleash chaos just kind of, it came from me in like a fit of anger,
right,
or something, and maybe I killed somebody as a young person, and now they're like, oh man, don't that guy's dangerous, don't go near him,
he can't hold on his powers,
he doesn't know how to control nothing. Lame. Who finally taught you to control the magic bursting forth from you, and why are they no longer able to guide you? Kind of thinking of One Piece. I was kind of thinking of a character kind of like Shanks, where he was just an older individual who from a young age influenced me.
Yeah.
And he went on a very nondescript quest very far away, and I haven't seen him since.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's been like 12 years.
He's somewhere out there.
He's out there. Yeah. He just ain't with me. He didn't. And the last question was, you have a true fear you hide from everyone. What is it, and why does it scare you? I'm hiding it from everybody, so you don't get to know.
Fair point. All right. Fair enough. We got a cool character development there with a little bit of a plot twist coming up some point. Cameron, what did you come up with or what are your background questions? And if you had some idea on an answer for them.
Yeah. So the first one says, a terrible creature hurt your community and you vowed to hunt it down. What is it?
An orangutan?
No. See, I thought that, but it says I want to hunt it down.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't make sense with an orangutan. So what is it, and what unique trail or sign does it leave that would be recognizable to find it?
Right.
I wrote giant snake.
Ooh.
So like a giant snake was always attacking our community, which is
Asmodeus.
part of the reason why we became nomadic, was to get away from it.
Gotcha.
But we would always see signs of it as if it was following our community.
He
got a taste for halflings, and he just couldn't. He wanted more, and so he would always be fondest, and we would always like. Our scouts would go out and they would see the trail and we'd have to change locations again. And how we recognize it, of course, it'd leave a giant like path in the ground because it was so big. But what made it unique from other giant snakes, was it had like a zigzagging pattern to its trail. So if you looked at its trail, it had like this indent of a zigzag under it.
Nice.
As if it's like it had like a bony plate that kind of stuck out on the outside, and you could recognize it because of that. So, anyways, if I killed that snake, I know I would, avenge the town, right?
Yeah.
The next one is your first kill almost killed you too.
Ooh.
What was it, and what part of you is never the same? My first kill was a crazed porcupine.
Okay.
Just went mad and just started attacking me one time, and I lost. He lost his left eye.
Oh.
Yeah. Just like one of its bristles flew out, just hit me right in the middle of my eye, and it's just gone.
Toothpicked your eye.
So my guy he wears an eye patch.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So, and yeah, I like how it kind of leads you into some character description.
There was a very interesting development one day when the orangutan kept pointing at my eye, and so my guy lifted the eye hole to show him the open socket, and the orangutan was more interested than scared, which was was surprising response that my guy had, because he never shown it to anyone before, and he figured the first person would be scared to see it. So seeing someone more curious about it than scared made him happier with who he was.
Yeah, kind of a self-confidence thing. Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Is the orangutan's name, given his love for Stewart?
That's a really good name. I had not had a name for him, but Stewart's too good.
That's pretty good. I love it.
We just call him Stu.
It's what he is, and he is what he eats.
He is what he is, and that's Stu. I'm like, hey, that's my buddy Stu, and he's like, ooh.
I love it.
Then my last one is: you traveled many dangerous land, but what land do you refuse to go? Simple answer: Catland. Don't go to Catland.
Is it a theme park, or is it?
I shudder. I dare not speak of Catland.
They took a cat cafe and they turned it into an entire amusement park, and he refuses to go there.
Never again.
Never again.
He's shaking.
I had so much fur in my coffee. All right. Well, that'll be it.
Don't ever mention Catland around Stu, too. You see his eyes just like glare up, and he's got this rage, and he starts like beating his chest.
He starts like having almost seizure-esque.
Yeah, we both don't like Catland.
Oh, all right. So it was a shared experience. Well, hey, the experience. Yeah, there we go. There's the experience right there. Yeah. So awesome. All right, Dave, you got your rogue. What are his background questions, and what's he got kind of plotted?
So what did you get caught doing that had you exiled from your home community?
Ooh.
So I chose the wild-born community.
Yeah.
So it would be like a tribe of frogs, basically. So I said that I stole like the pearl crown from the royal spawn.
Did he use his
legacy,
his special tongue to snatch it right off their head?
So I have this idea for the frog tribe that, if you ever seen like frogs or toads, they can be kind of brutal when they're younger and like eating their siblings and whatnot.
It's disturbing.
So like this frog culture, in my mind, it's like you would only have pretty much a few of your siblings that would survive or whatever. In my character, he kind of just survived by hiding most of the time.
Okay.
But he did develop a close relationship with one of his spawn mates. But he knew he wasn't really going to succeed in that society because he was so small. Because he was hiding all the time, he really didn't get that much food or whatever. He didn't want to eat his siblings, probably.
Right.
Or maybe he did. I don't know.
The other ones, not the one he had the connection with.
You're right. But so he stole the crown. He had to get out of there. So the second question: you used to have a different life from this one that you've tried to leave behind you. Who from that life is still chasing you?
The whole freaking tribe.
Yeah, that could be like some royal guard bounty hunters or something.
I like that. That'd be cool.
From the frog tribe. Also, probably anybody who I stole from
would
also be after me. But then who from the other life are you most sad to say goodbye to? Probably my spawn mate, Norbert.
Norbert? That's such a great name. So wait, do you still have the crown?
No, I sold that.
Okay.
I had to sell it to start my new life.
Yeah, that makes sense. He pawned it off. Maybe somewhere out there at some pawn shop. It's still sitting on the shelf. I guess that would be an interesting plot point too. Like, what if he was able to get it back and he gave it back to I mean, I don't know. They'd probably still make him pay for having stolen it for so long. But yeah, that'd be...
Well, I kind of had the idea like, oh, maybe only one like frog egg from each spawn can survive, so they all have to like kill each other to be the best warrior. And my character just like he hid, but he developed a relationship with his brother, and his brother didn't want to eat him, so they kind of became friends, but he still had to hide all the time. And then he realized one day, oh, I have to get out of here. So he needed to steal the crown to have money to start his new life.
Right. So your brother would have had to have been the one that did survive out of however many other siblings. And maybe like the pressure of like, we've seen your brother running around, hiding around and stuff like that. You need to go get rid of him. It's part of tradition that, there's only one. There can only be one. It'd be, oh my gosh, what if his brother was leading the royal guards that are trying to hunt you down? And he's real conflicted about like Prince Zuko, inner frustration, unsurety, kind of man, there's something really cool there. So awesome. Very cool. Next up, you would do your name and pronouns. We'll skip over that. I mean, unless anybody has
we
a name idea.
Named our character. I feel that's very important. We named my orangutan.
Yeah, that's true. And then after that, you would have connection questions. These are very similar to your background, and like Dave mentioned, he has his brother, and Cameron has his orangutan, and so on and so forth. It kind of talks about your connections with the people of this world. So who did, like, for instance, and I don't know if they're different on each one of the sheets, but for instance, the sorcerer one says, "Who do you trust or why do you trust me so different?" Oh, you know what?
This is supposed to your party members.
Yes,
because I feel like rather than just meeting in a tavern for the first time and all doing the same work and then being like, let's just hang out.
Yes.
We are starting as a party of adventurers who seemingly have done this for a while already.
Yes. Or they even just recently met each other, but there's some background.
Baiting into them as they're doing a mission rather than finding them all meet.
Exactly. Because it's a little bit cliche to do it just you met in a tavern.
Also, it's more natural for true development.
Yeah.
You won't open up immediately to brand new people you're doing a one-off adventure with, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
People you've been doing stuff with for a while.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So obviously, I mean, Skylar's going to say it, but in the sorcerer questions, one of the things is, what have I done that makes you wary of me already? Mm-hmm. So obviously there is some past between us.
Right. Mm-hmm. Something that'll come up, and it'll be part of the narrative. It'll be an emotional moment, more than likely, that'll kind of create more depth to the characters and create some controversy, probably.
So that's interesting. You kind of have to maybe work with your party members, because you could be like, here, this is what your character did, and be like, my character, you might have to do kind of the
workshop it.
Yeah.
No, but maybe let's kind of work with the suggestions, because what if your character, that one time where he murdered all the children in that orphanage, you'd be like, no,
I wouldn't do that.
My seraph who worships the god of life? No, I don't think he would. Awesome. All right. So that's pretty much everything that is currently released for character creation. Again, it's really well designed on the character creation sheet. You've got places for your armor, your evasion, all your stats, everything like that. Just to kind of pitch my idea for one that I did here, just so I can have a little bit of fun as well. So I did a sorcerer as well. His name is Levi Christofferson. He, him. I picked the Qatari, the sort of feline race. Ugh. I love playing kind of, yes. So
I'm so glad none of you picked Qatari.
This is assuming I'm running anything with this. No. I was thinking you would, and then I'd get to play this guy.
Oh, no.
My favorite characters to play are always the kind of like naughty troublemaker types and stuff like that. So I often will lean towards rogues, warlocks, and bards. I really couldn't decide. I had a lot of difficulty deciding between the bard and the sorcerer, but the more I looked into the domain cards that come with both, I felt like sorcerer felt a little bit more towards this realm. So Levi Christopherson, Qatari, he comes from the Slyborn community, and I used the Primal Origin subclass instead of the one that you picked, Jackson. So I like that we were able to snag, two different ones. Right. Highest stat is in agility. I kind of had this idea that he kind of had like kind of a roguish thing going on. So he's kind of nimble. He's used to kind of causing trouble in town, having to run out of there. Very Aladdin. Strength, of course, is his -1 like everybody else's, because who cares about strength? I did take the dual staff because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like Gambit or something. I thought that was kind of cool. But otherwise, so with Arcana, I thought about taking the Unleash Chaos as well. So kind of having just that massive explosion of potential damage at some point. For Midnight, I think I also took the Uncanny Disguise that you took, Dave, for your rogue, just to kind of give me that classic, like I can change my appearance and kind of sneak around and do stuff like that. One of my favorite characters I ever played was a changeling in Dungeons and Dragons, and that was kind of his whole thing. Was he had just a wardrobe of costumes, and then he would shapeshift into people that he had met along the way, change into the appropriate outfit, and then just go mess with people. So that's kind of what I'm going for this, kind of being able to replay that. But again, that's pretty much everything there is to know about the character creation. We hope that you guys try out Daggerheart, of course, and then we will soon be able to, probably at the same time this episode comes out will be when they release a lot of the other information. And they open it up to everybody because we're not allowed to talk about it until then. So definitely check out Daggerheart. Definitely try it out. I know we are looking at possible opportunities in the future to hopefully be able to try out Daggerheart as a campaign, but we'll see kind of where things go as far as schedules and stuff. But definitely check it out. Check out the rules. Check out the character creation. Have some fun with it. This has been an episode, kind of a special episode of Session Zero Heroes. So definitely check out the stuff that we've got. Benders and Brews Season 3 is airing right now. Unless you're listening to this episode way down the line. But whatever the case, thank you all for joining. We'll see you guys next time.